Good morning to Miss Koindu and my friends. So we are from PD10 and we're gonna to present a topic which is social stratifications. We are from batch PD10, Bachelor in Physiotherapy. So we'll go to introductions. So starting from me. Okay, so there is a definitions of stratifications. Social stratification is always present. Every society is divided into more or less distinct groups, so there is no society is unstratified. So stratifications involve the distributions of the unequal rights and privileges among the members of a society. Stratification is a process of ranking status which are found in all society. And according to MNN to me, there is also some characteristics of the stratifications, which is it is a social insight, universal device, and also consequence. So can go to the next slide. So there is some divisions of society into classes and forming the hierarchy of the practice and power is a universal feature of social system. Sociologists have distinguished like four main types of social stratifications. So there is namely salaries, estate, caste, and class. And go to the next slide. So I will talk about some origin of stratifications. So according to the rate, social stratification has come to being due to the functional necessity of the social system. And also for the professional can attribute social stratifications mainly to inherit the difference in environmental and conditions. And also according to Commerce, there is some social factors are responsible to the emergence of different social terms, example like a social stratifications. Okay, so there is three more, which is the component and other contents, and the origin of social stratification is to be found in the conquest of one group by another. According to Spanglish, there is a social stratifications found upon stratification which is correct whenever social differentiation is positive in the terms of functions and powers. And then there is one more, which is the racial difference accompanied by dissimilarity also lead to stratifications. And go to the next slide. I will pass to my friend who is Wang Kai-Xuan to present.
Good morning, my name is Wang Kai-Xuan. So now I will present about social mobility. Individuals are normally recognized in social through status they occupy and roles they enact. Not only society is dynamic, but also the individuals are dynamic. Social mobility mean more from lower position to the higher position. Secure the previous job from an inferior one. Thus, people from on society continue to move up and down the status scales. This movement is called social mobility. The study of social mobility is an important aspect of the social stratification. Next slide is the definition of the social mobility. According to the volume says, social mobility refers to the movement of a person or persons from one society status to another. According to WP Scott, social mobility refers to movement of an individual or group from one social position, class, or social stratum to another. Next, okay. According to the Sociology Dictionary, Open Education Sociology Dictionary say that, thus is clearly that social mobility means movement of an individual or group from one social position or status to another. Example, poor people may become rich, the bank peons may become bank officers, farmer may become ministers, and a petty businessman may become a bankrupt, and so on. The next slide is the origin of the social mobility concept. Russian-born America, sociology and politics, activism. The name is P.T. Sorokin. This is the man, and he is the first introduced the concept of social mobility of his book, Social and Cultural Mobility. He stated that there is no social that is completely open, such as the class system, and no society that is completely closed, like caste system in India. Next slide. Okay, there are two types of system of social mobility. The first one is closed and the second one is open system. Next. Okay, so a closed system is a rigid system with clearly demarcated boundaries. Social status are strictly defined and they determine access to opportunities. Social position is ascribed at birth. There is no social mobility from level to another. For example, the caste system in India, people are born into a caste and this determines one occupation, social interaction, power, and education. No amount of achievement can change a person caste. Next slide. The open, no, up a bit. Yeah, the open one. Open system of social mobility. An open form and social mobility is based primarily on economic criteria, particular income. Social position is achieved through one effort. The boundaries between classes are more flexible with a closed system. There's opportunity with social mobility as individual can move up or move down the class system, and therefore the status can improve or decline. The class system in modern industrial society is the best example of an open certification system. Next is the causes of the social mobility. First causes are the education achievement can lead to upward social mobility as a person can gain professional qualification needed for the middle class occupation. The next is the marriage can lead to upward social mobility as a person can marry someone in the class above. For example, the Kate Middleton is the upper middle class but married to the Prince William into the upper classes. And the third one is geographical causes. The people migrate from the area where the geography conditions are conducive for them. They migrate to those areas or countries where the geographical conditions are good. Next, the fourth one, desire for a better living standard. The desire for a better living standard also triggers the process of a social mobility. This is why our country, many people migrate to the United States and the other country. The fifth one is desire for higher education. Young have to engage in the process of social mobility for higher education. People come to cities for higher education and even to foreign country. And thank you. I will pass to the next person.
All right. Thank you, Kai Xuan. So my name is Paulina, and today I'll be talking about the pioneers of social stratification. So next slide, please. All right. So today I'll be talking about Karl Marx. So his full name is Karl Heinrich Marx. He's a German philosopher, critic of political economy, economist, historian, sociologist, and political theorist, journalist, and also a social revolutionary. So one of his best known publication is the Communist Manifesto and also a 3-volume Das Kapital. So Marx's political and philosophical thought had a very big influence in intellectual, economic, and political aspect in the history. And his theories are usually known as Marxism. So as you can see, this is the picture of him. Next. All right, so before going more in depth, I'll just explain a few key takeaways about Marxism. So Marxism is a social, political, and economical theory, which is originated by nonetheless Karl Marx. He focused mainly on the struggle between the capitalist and the working class. So what he's trying to say here is that the upper class, also the capitalists, are having a power struggle. They tend to be more exploitative to the working class. Hence, it creates a class conflict. Also, he also inaugurated the idea of the class conflict theory. So he also predicted that probably in the future, the working class would create a revolution create a revolution against the upper class. So what we can see here in layman's term is that the relationship between the business owner, or in other hands, the upper class society and also the workers, the lower class society. So the expectation from workers are higher wage, better working space. However, the business owners would want more profit, so they will tend to exploit them by giving poor working wage and also pretty bad working environment. However, the workers are unable to rebel because the upper class, they have total control over society and they have the ability to manipulate people in the societal system to favor them. Next, please. So there are a few criticism about Marxism itself. So here he said that he predicted a revolt against the capitalists, but next, please. Yeah, it did not happen. And next would be he predicted that the working condition will worsen, but as of now, we have better working condition and also how to say people with the working class people have better condition in the sense that they have better benefits and also a good pay in that sense. Next would be he predicted that the working class would be manipulated. However, with the presence of free speech, not everyone would agree to every statement. Hence, they also have their own opinion, which may differ. Next, please. All right, so the contribution here that Karl Marx have given is the German ideology. It's a publication that goes in hand with the W.F. Hegel's notion, where he formulates his ideology about historical materialism. So, sorry, in a nutshell, what he's trying to say is that the society that we live in is always evolving, leading towards a ideal society. So next would be economic and philosophic manuscript of 1844. So what he talks about here is the alienation. What alienation means is that the worker class who are actively participating in the production process are separated from the process alone, also from themselves and also within the society. This is in fact a form of discrimination. And apart from that, he identified 4 types of alienation, which is alienation from product of labor, production process, from self, and also others in the society. Next. So the next 2 publication is Communist Manifesto and the Das Kapitalist, one of the most prominent ideology that was spread at that time. So let's go first into the Communist Manifesto. This was co-written with Friedrich Engels. So what he proposed here is the class conflict theory and promotes the idea of communism. However, the idea of communism, the class conflict theory was already inaugurated way back, but did not fall into communism. So in this book or publication, he was more to pro-communism and also talked about a classless society. Next, the Das Kapitalist. So, sorry. Next, the Das Kapitalist. So what differs from the Communist Manifesto here is that he talked more into both social and economical analysis of the capitalism itself. So next, I'll pass over to Lee Soon Wei to talk about the other pioneers of social stratification. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paulina. I'm Lee Soon Wei, and now I'm going to talk about the Maximilian Karl Emil Weber's, which was a German sociologist, historian, jurist, and political economist, regarded as among the most important theorism of the development of modern Western society. Alongside Karl Marx and Emil Durkheim, Weber is regarded as one of the founders of sociology and is particularly famous for his analysis of capitalism. And he's best known for his thesis of the Protestant ethic relating Protestantism to capitalism and for his idea on bureaucracy. And his most famous work written is the Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism, which published in German in 1905. In the right side is his picture. Next. Next is his theory is like Karl Marx and Max Weber regards society as being characterized by conflicts over power and resource. And Weber defines power as the ability to get your own way even when other people resist. He believed that society was organized in a stratified hierarchy system with some people being more powerful than others and being less able to dominate or resist the power. Although he agreed with Marx that relation of equality are central to the social life, he also rejected the Marxist idea that inequality is always the most significant form of social inequality. Next. So there is some criticism, which mainly came from Bavarian approach of came from the Marxism, which argued that focusing on multiple dimensions of inequality, obscure class division, the fundamental importance within capitalism societies, which class is unequal distribution of economy of financial rewards, which separate into different groups, which the property upper class, the property less white collar worker, the pretty bourgeoisism, and the manual working class, which the status distinction between working class often encouraged to divide and rule by the ruling class, which the status refer to the unequal distribution of social honor or prestige. Significant political struggles are ultimately linked to the class struggles, conflicts over economic interests. Nevertheless, despite this criticism, Weber's idea had considerable influence on modern sociologists. Next. Max Weber's contribution is his concept will be the iron cage, which is even more relevant today than he first wrote in the 1905. He suggests that technological and economic relationships that organize and grow out of capitalism production became themselves fundamentally forced in the society. As such, one life and worldwide are shaped by it to such an extent that one probably can't even imagine what an alternative way of life would look like. So those born into the cage live out its dictate, and in doing so, reproduce the cage in perpetuity. For this reason, Weber considered the iron cage a massive hindrance to freedom. Thus, if you are born into a society organized this way, with the division of labor and hierarchy social structure that come with it, you can help but live within this system. Next. So Weber also think social class is a deeply important concept and phenomenon in sociology. He reasoned that the level of prestige associated with one education and occupation, as well as one political group affiliation, in addition to wealth, combine to create a hierarchy of people in society. Weber's thought on power and social strategy, which he shared in his book titled Economy and Society, lead to the complex formulation of social economy, status, and social class. Sociologists have Max Weber to thank for pointing out that one's position in society relative to others is about more than how much money one has. Next. The Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism is one of the famous work of Max Weber. It has been a mainstay of sociology studies since it was first translated into English by American sociologist Tucker Carlson in 1930. This text is notable for how Weber merged economy, sociology with sociology of religion, and as such for how he researched and theorized the interplay between the cultural realm of value and belief and the economic system of society. Protestantism encouraged the embrace of work as a calling from God and consequently a dedication to work that allowed one to earn a lot of money. This combined with value aestheticism of living a simple elite life devoid of costly pleasure, foster an acquisitive spirit. Later, as a cultural Later, as the cultural force of religion declined, Weber argues that capitalism was free from the limit placed on it by Protestant moral and expand as economic system of acquisition. Weber argues in the text that capitalism developed to the advantage that it did in the West due to the fact. Sorry. Okay, next. I'm going to talk about the Charles Wright Mills in full, which is an American sociologist who, with Hans Heidegger, applies the popularized Max Weber theories in the United States, and he also applied Karl Mayhem theories on the sociology of knowledge to the political thought and behavior of intellectual. There are three books which define his term as the sociologist, with the power elite, white collar, the American middle class, and the sociological imagination. So the power elite is looked to focus on the relationship and the class alliance among the US political, military, and economic elites, while the white collar is a study of American middle class and the social imagination, which represents a model of analysis of the interdependence of subjective experience between a person's biography and general social structure and historical development. Next. So his theories will be the social research is focused on the power elite and the extent of power they hold within social institution, use and abuse of obtained power and effect on social life of individual or society. He explained that the nature of power, distribution of power among individuals as well as social institution, use and abuse of power obtained by individual and social organization, myth of power created by power elite of given society in the mind of general population, and most importantly, the form of power. He categorized power into three types. These include coercion, authority, and manipulation. However, power is the most important and critical element for conflict theories to analyze society. Therefore, male social theory are also based on power. The first form of next. For his contribution is the sociological imagination is regarded as the most influenced work, in which he described the way in which one should observe the world in order to view it from a sociologist's perspective. Thus had the mindset in which he wanted people to take into account that some of people's personal problem as being public issue. Through his book, he wanted the common folk to understand the issue which they had in their everyday life may be traced back to the government itself. He wants people to observe the connection between individuals and their everyday life. He further urged them to observe how the greater social force have an effect on their everyday life. Mills believes that sociological imagination is very essential to learn and survive as a society. He urged the common folk to understand their contemporary life and social structure in the historical context and possibly a study for the near future. They ensured that social change keep happening for the betterment of society. They also believe that political institutions should keep in check by the people as they are there for the people's betterment. So these people study the social structure of institutions in order to study what the contribution are offering and how they are contribution to help with transforming society. Next. Okay, now I'm going to pass to Jared Lim.
My name is Jared, and today I'll be presenting about social stratification in Malaysia. So Malaysia is a unique country because it is a country that has a variety of cultures, languages, and religions. In today's society, there are three major views, which are social functionalism, symbolic interactionism, and social conflict theory. To analyze the social stratification in Malaysia from different sociological perspectives, below are the analysis and discussion on social stratification. So the first one is gender. Social stratification exists in Malaysia because of the continuing dominance of males in almost every sector of society. Male-centered society can be significantly responsible for gender discrimination against women within the political empowerment, economic involvement, and implementation of laws over the past few decades. The comments with there are a lot of solid indicators such as gender ratio in government departments and agencies, accounting for the vulnerability of women in political empowerment, And also in a recent study on women empowerment in public life and decision-making in Malaysia, men occupied majority of seats in the Parliament of Malaysia. So next, as of 2019, women only constituted 16% of members of the Parliament and administration, 18% of the Senate, and 14.9% of the House of Representatives. Although women make up 48.3% of Malaysia population, 40.7% of Malaysia labor force, and the majority of those getting a higher education, which is the bachelor or higher degrees. Simultaneously, the percentage of female judges in Sharia judiciary was scarcely 13.4%, which is only a total of 27 females holding positions out of 202 judges. And even worse, the upper level position in Sharia judiciary, which is Director General Judges of the Court of Appeal Sharia, was fully dominated by males. So next, which is the economy aspect. In the aspect of economy, social stratification is shown in different ethics. The Malaysian government has many policies to assist Bumi Putera in Malaysian compared to non-Bumi Putera. Bumi Putera means Malay and orang asli of Peninsular Malaysia, Sabah and Sarawak. When referred to Article 153 of Federal Constitution of Malaysia, Bumi Putera Malaysia have special positions which compared to other Malaysians. Half of Malaysians face the problem of poverty, including 64.8% Bumi Putera, 24.8% Chinese, and also 39.2% Indian. Next will be the health aspect. The significance of social stratification for health inequality in Malaysia is the deprived group and rich groups. Malaysia has groups for B40, which is the bottom 40%, M40, the middle 40%, and also the T20, the top 20%. The lower income earners is always to be top to the prevalence of non-communicable diseases, NCDs. For 2015, such as diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, abdominal obesity, underweight, and mental problems. This situation is occurring in lower income earners due to rich people being more capable of boostings. Many researchers have found that poorer communities purchase cheaper diets and make them nutritious. On the other hand, government health facilities are being the main choice for the lower income group and the fourth income group and T20 group visits the private hospital or clinics. Most lower income earners are delaying periods to visit public hospitals or clinics because they do not have enough income to undertake the expensive private health systems fee, and it will delay treatment for illness and become serious. It affected common life, feeling stressed or depressed. This situation also will make lower income people visit private hospitals and purchase at higher costs. It shows that the lower income earners are more stressful than the higher income earners due to financial burdens and cannot enjoy better treatment for private healthcare with rich people. So next will be the education. Social stratification can be also shown in the education of Malaysia. Students from higher classes can attend school with higher standards while receiving more opportunities, while underprivileged students might be facing the problems of dropping out of school due to financial issues. Transportation is also an issue for lower class students when going to school, while some of the students from higher classes have their drivers. Students from higher classes can attend school with higher standards while receiving more opportunities, while underprivileged students might be facing the problem of dropping out of school due to financial issues. I'll pass to my next batchmate.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next presenter is me, Malako Kobe. I'll be presenting about social stratification in South Africa. So this is a form of stratification specifically or only in South Africa, and it was called apartheid. So here, apartheid is a word which means apartness. Apartness means they were making people apart. Is the name of policy that governed relations between the white minority and the non-white majority of South Africa during segregation. Then the apartheid name was used to describe the racial segregation policies embraced by the white. So apartheid dictated where South Africans, on the basis of their race, could live and work, the type of education they could receive, and whether they could vote. As you can see in the picture here, there were certain areas where Black people were not allowed. So there were some posters everywhere which will show you whether you should go there or not, depending on your color. Okay, let's continue. So there was problem with land ownership because there were laws that were made in 1910, which was separating colonies and Union of South Africa. The law made it illegal for Black South Africans to own or even rent land outside of their native reserves, which amounted to only 7 to 8% of the South African land. But all of the land was ever actually turned into reserves. Let's go. Continue. Then the other aspect of apartheid, there was movement control. There was a law that required members of the Black majority and other to carry identification papers at all times and restricted their movement in certain areas. There were also control like Black settlement, forcing Black people to reside in places where their labor would benefit the white settlers. So this law prohibited the Black people from entering urban areas without immediately find a job. So we were only allowed to go to a place where the whites were staying if you were only finding a job. Otherwise, they were not allowed to enter white people's area. Then these laws were passed. As you can see, there was everywhere, even when you go to the sea or anywhere, there were areas where it was specifically for the white people and specifically for the Black. So they were always supposed to carry a passbook containing their fingerprints, their photos, and information to access the non-Black areas. Without the pass, one would not be allowed to enter, or otherwise this person was going to face a jail term. So the laws banned social contact between the races. There were segregated public facilities and restriction on certain jobs. Example, a Black person was not supposed or was not allowed to become a lawyer or a judge. Okay. Then the other problem which was there during apartheid, the Black South Africans were forced to move from their homes. So the Black South Africans from rural areas designated as white to the homelands, and they were forced to sell their land at a very low price to the white farmers. And from there, they were forcibly removed from their homes and they were deposited in a place called Bantustan, where they were plunged into poverty and hopelessness. And most of the people will be taken, the Black people, Black South Africans, were taken to the cities or they were taken out of the cities, were taken to the townships where there was no proper care, like basic needs, sanitation, proper water. So they were in poverty. We continue. Then when it comes to education, the Black South Africans were forced to learn Afrikaans. Afrikaans is not an African language. It was the language that was made by the white people, and they named it Afrikaans. So there was an attempt to force the Afrikaans language on Black South Africans. So there was a law in 1974 which required the use of Afrikaans and English on equal basis in high schools and outside the homelands. Separate educational standards were established for whites. Okay. The Bantu Education Act, which was done in 1953, provided for the creation of state-run schools, which Black children were required to attend, with the goal of training the children for the manual labor and menial jobs. Here it means that they were all the black society were not allowed to do white collar jobs. So for them to go to school, they were forced to learn what they didn't want, just because they wanted them to become manual labor to work for them in future. Okay, let's continue. Still in under education, they were not going to the same school. So the government created new ethnic universities, specifically for the black people, according to their tribes, which was the Sotho, Tswana, and Venda students, as well as the school for the Indians. Yes. Then the other aspect in apartheid was gender inequality. Other stratification that changed gender issues mostly on the feminine side. In the past, women were looked down upon and just considered as people who just belong in the kitchen. This type of discrimination did not just apply to black people, but to white women as well. Women were not allowed to participate in political issues such as voting, and women were not given as much opportunities as men. Thank you very much.
I'm Joanne, and now I will talk about the social stratification of United Kingdom. UK was a class-ridden society. Today, multiculturalism and a changing economy are gradually eroding the UK class system, but some features of the system are remain. The UK society is often divided into 5 main groups of classes: lower class, working class, middle class, upper class, and also aristocrat. For the lower class, it is a controversial term to describe the long-term unemployed homeless people. Next, for the working class, it is the basic low, lower, unskilled or semi-skilled workers, such as those with no university or college education, and it includes occupations such as factory workers and laborers. A popular slang to describe this group is child, which focus on the negative stereotype of young people from this group, who are perceived to the brush and loutish that wear real or imitation design clothes. Next, for the middle class, is the majority of British people fall into this category, such as the shop owners, white-collar professionals, teachers, nurses, and the list go on. A slang used from this group is champion socialists. This because they are comfortable financially but have the socialist views. Next is the upper class. A popular slang for this group is tough because it has both negative and positive connotation. A tough is someone that may think they are superior to others, someone who with a good job, and such as the being a barrister can be considered upper class. Next is the aristocrats. The royal family and those with titles such as lord and or baron fall into this group. They are often referred to the bleu bird, a phrase that originates in France. The term originally referred to the people who were so rich that they did have to work and rarely went out into the sun. So their skin is very pale and their veins were visible under their skin. So how do the people fit into each category? They come down to 3 main factors, which are wealth, class, and occupation. Wealth is inclusive of land ownership. It can push a person into the upper class. Then the title and birth come into the picture, with some old English families still holding a high social status because their origin not because they are still wealthy. And the class is not only a boundary. Although some people in the UK still refer to themselves as working class, lower middle, or upper middle, but to the majority of British, the meanings don't seem to matter in today. Next, I will pass to my group mates, Li Huangyi. Thank you.
Hello, good morning. I'm Li Huangyi. So today I'll be talking about social stratification in the United States of America. So firstly, sociologists generally identify three levels of class in the United States, which is the upper class, middle class, and lower class. Wealth is the most significant way of distinguishing classes because it can be transferred to one children and perpetuate the class structure. So starting off the upper class, they are considered as the top and only the powerful elite get to see the views from there. In the United States, people with extreme wealth make up 1% of the population and they own roughly 1/3 of the country's wealth. Money does not only provide access to material goods, but also access to a lot of power. So now I'll be explaining the difference about old money and also the new money. So starting off with the old money, they have been in the family for a generation, owns heirloom of furniture or jewelry, does not need to show their wealth by purchasing extravagant items. They belong to the elite upper class and also they are highly educated. While for the new money, they are the first generation of money. They own mostly new pieces of furniture or jewelry, feels the need to show their wealth to impress the others, belongs to any class but the elite upper class, and they are not necessarily educated. Next, for the middle class, the first one will be the upper middle class. The people here tend to continue on their postgraduate degrees. They study subjects such as business, management, law, or medicine. They pursue their own careers, own their homes, and also travel on vacation. And lastly, their children receive high quality education and also healthcare, specialized need and interest of their children, which can lead to more social mobility. Next, for the lower middle class, the people here tend to complete a 2 years associated degrees from community or technical college or a 4-year bachelor degree. Their job carries more prestige and come with slightly higher paycheck. With this income, they can afford a decent and mainstream lifestyle, but struggle to maintain it as they generally don't have enough income to build significant saving. And so next, for the lower class, also known as the working class, there are 3 subsets: the working class, working poor, and also underclass. People from the lower class have less formal education and earn smaller incomes. They work jobs that require less training or experience than middle class occupations and often do routine tasks under close supervision. For the working class, the higher is also the highest subcategory of the lower class, often lands on steady jobs. Their work is hands-on and often physically demanding, such as landscaping, cooking, cleaning, or building. For the working poor, they are more unskilled and also low-paying employment. Their jobs are often seasonal or temporary, such as migrant farm workers, house cleaners, and their education is limited. So the last one will be the underclass. They live mainly in the inner cities. Many of them are unemployed or underemployed. Some of the underclass are homeless, and many rely on welfare system to provide food, medical care, and also housing assistance. The underclass people has more stress, poorer health, and also suffer crisis fairly regularly. That's all for me. I'll pass it to the next person.
A very good morning. My name is Rahmana Izan. So today I'm going to talk about social stratification in India. Okay, next. So India would be known as a world of its diversity. So it's a country to home of several cultures, religions, and also people from all walks of life. However, this diversity is often met with problems. So the stratification is one of the greatest social evils within the people of the country, and it determines almost every aspect of a person's everyday life. Social stratification in India society manifests itself not only in one or two, but in variety of ways. Next. Okay, so moving on to caste, often proclaimed to be the oldest form of social division present in the world, the caste system is at the heart of the Hinduism. So it has four major varnas, which is the Brahmin, where is the priests and also the academics, the Kshatriya, which is the warriors and also kings, the Vaisya, which is the merchants and also landowners, and Sudra is the commoners, peasants, and also servants. And lastly is the untouchable, which is the outcast or also street sweepers and also cleaners. Next. So there are 6 main features of India caste system. The first one is the segmental division of society, which it divides people into groups based on their birth, regardless of their academics and also occupational standing. So a person cannot escape their social position due to the family background in which they are born with it. So next is the caste of the group into the social hierarchies, which is according to the prestige and status, so which impart them from higher and also lower positions. Next is food and interaction between groups in society. So the types of caste may not fit at the lower caste, and also the breaking of the rules might cause polluting in the case of hierarchy, and also might attract a severe social sanction. The not so upper class cannot interact with the lower class and also the around their vicinity. Next is the intercaste marriage and are strictly prohibited, whereas endogamy is endogamy is only allowed practice in the caste system. This restriction on exogamy helps maintain the caste homogeneity and also the purity of caste. Next, last, caste groups are either privileged or disadvantaged in civil and also religious aspect. In residential settings, the most low caste are forced to occupy the very outskirts of the village. Certain rituals and ceremonies are only reserved for the upper class, and also the so-called upper class get to enjoy greater general liberty and also exemption for criminal charges and punishment rather than the lower class. Lastly is occupation. So people do not have free choice regarding what they can pursue as an occupational activity. Professions are inherited, and activities such as tanning, sweeping, and also animal slaughtering is to be called as declared as degrading. Next, we move on to gender. So gender socialization starts at birth. When a child is defined as woman or man based on their sexes. So also sexism begins in India also as well. Female feticides and also infanticides instances abound in India, a country that privileged men over women. So where girls are forced to play with dolls and also kitchen sets, whereas the boys are given action figures and also forbidden to play any toys that are labeled as girls. So girls and boys have different educational options. Boys receive more formal educations than girls. Family in India believe that woman is a burden and also need to marry them off as soon as they reach at a particular age. Next is tribes in India. So tribes, or we call it Adivasis of India, are social stratification in India that was introduced by the British administration during their dominance over India. So tribes are often divided into communities with shared of ritual, belief, customs, practices, territorial boundaries, identities, and also language. Tribal people are also evicted from their ancestral grounds, driven from their homes, and also forced to labor on estates. So many people are also compelled to change from animistic belief to a mainstream religion like Christianity, Hinduism, and also Islam. Tribal clothing, accessories, and lifestyle are also regarded as abnormal, and also the tribal people are frequently forced to switch to more modern kind of fashion to avoid constant criticism and also critics. That is all for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mona. My name is Mehala Pandit, and I'll be speaking about the social stratifications of United Arab Emirates. So the class system in the UAE is largely defined by the classic income-based definition that groups the people based on their occupations rather than by their ethnicity. So UAE's urgency in recent decades to develop both economically and socially, there was a huge demand for talented professionals from across the world, regardless of their nationality. Development milestones and the national vision demanded no less. So there have been three momentous shifts in the UAE's demographics. The first one is the leading the charge was the multinational white-collar workforce, followed by the male-dominated blue-collar labor force, predominantly from India and Pakistan mostly. And last but not least was the domestic workforce, mainly from the Southeast Asia and in particular from the Philippines. Next. Therefore, when defining the class system in the UAE, it is the type of jobs that are relevant, although it is seen that certain nationalities have provided the majority of the workforce in some sectors. Next. There are categories and subcategories in the UAE of the social class. First one is the UAE nationals and the foreign immigrants. The UAE nationals are subdivided further into four main social classes, which is the ruling family, the merchant or business people, and professionals like teachers, engineers, which are middle class people, and also the Bedouin nomads and the pearl divers. Okay, the ruling family of the UAE is a federation of 7 emirates, which are ruled by 6 royal families, namely Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Sharjah, Al Quwain, Ras Al Khaimah, Fujairah, and all these states were formed by bringing together 6 emirates with the Ras Al Khaimah joining the union in 1972. So the capital of the UAE, Abu Dhabi, is ruled by the proud and the noble Al Nahyan family, and this royal family descends from a branch of the Bani Yas tribe known as the House of Falai, and the Bani Yas tribe was a powerful familial tribe located in the ancient Arabia. The current president of the UAE is the most influential royal of Abu Dhabi because he has been named the 53rd most powerful man in the world by Forbes, and his family is counted as one of the richest royal families in the world, and he has the world's tallest building named after him, the Burj Khalifa, and his name is His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Said Al Nahyan. And Dubai's ruling family are also descendants of the Bani Yas tribe, and they are from another branch. So this tribe is branched out in 1833 with more than 800 members of the Maktoum family settling in what is now known as the Dubai Creek. So the members of this Dubai royal family are credited for putting their country on the map initially as a coastal city popular for fishing and the sea trade. On the other hand, the immigrants, the second category, is also further divided into 2 groups, which is top professionals and the middle class. So in the top professional comprises of the doctors and professors of universities, and the next one is the middle class, which comprises of school teachers, skilled technicians, and semi-skilled laborers who mainly work in the construction sites. So this employment-based class system is a byproduct of the economical development model, and this demographic shift, especially the increase in the young male labor force, has affected the Emiratis' day-to-day lives of the locals, which is on the one hand, and the other hand is the ramifications for how the members of certain employment classes are treated daily. So many class systems around the world privileges one class over the other, but it is safe to say that every employment class within the UAE has played a critical role in the development of their nation. So that's all from me. Thank you, and I'll pass it to the next person.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Miss. And my name is Wan Jing, and today I'm going to present about the economic certification. Okay, so what is the economic certification? So economic certification is defined as a systemic and practical ground approach to addressing the intergroup inequality. So for this, it has analyzed by different groups, which is the race, ethical, and also gender, caste, and sexuality and religion. So next, the characteristic of the economic certification, it has economic inequality, discrimination, and also the immigration and social economic assimilation. And the fourth one is the global inequality. So the first one, which is the economic inequality, which is understand that the wealth is a critical determinant of the family well-being, and also wealth inequality has a far-reaching effect in interconnected domains such as economic inequality, home ownership, and also the employment, and also the education. The certification economic highlight that the nature of the wealth generation, wealth inequality is the largest attribute to the intergeneration transmission effects. So for the example, which is the COVID crisis, and the diet rate for this group, which is in the both US and UK country. So the next discrimination, which has separate into two groups, which is the intergroup discrimination and intra-group discrimination. For the intergroup discrimination, it is understand that both of the group action, economic inequality and social economic assimilation. The certification in this intergroup, which is a ground in both but goes beyond this legal definition in recognize the historiographies and the structural factor and context that lead to the disparities. And the next one is intra-group discrimination. It is also necessary to highlight how the discrimination function within the social group, within the skin tone beyond the markets, and also determine the degree of discrimination. That's the final intra-group discrimination as formed as the tolerance create a scale of the social and economic opportunity across the world, which is the lighter skin people will have the appearance advantage. So the next one is immigration and social economic. The social economic assimilation is not the extent to which immigrant achieve the level of wealth and also the income, education, entitlement, and also other dimension. And however, the proposition of the individual work activities in the reality, the major determinants of social economic assimilation are skin tone, pre-migration wealth, and also the relative social position in the home country, and also the ethnic group. And the last one, which is the global inequality. The global inequality certification economic analysis that the reproduction of the certification across as well as within social around the world. A key finding is races, ethnic populations suffer the similar outcome across the global, demonstrate the worldwide structure races inequality. And in regard to the global inequality, the certification economists recognize colorism as a critical factor in the origin of such as the inequality. So that's all for me. Then thank you. Then I'll pass it to my next group mate.
Thank you, Anjing. My name is Fong Zilin, and now I'll talk about social stratification. Okay, so what is social stratification? It is a form of social inequality in terms of superiority, inferiority, and equality. So it is a process of differentiation whereby all societies arrange and rank their own social status in hierarchical form. So it defines the division or segregation of society into different strata, or as known as layers. So in the same layer of strata, the responsibilities are similar. So on the right side, you see the 1911 pyramid of capitalist system. Next. So there are 4 types of stratification. The first one will be caste. So the basis of his or her birth into a particular group is ascribed, where a person's rank and its accompanying rights and obligation defines the hereditary endogamous social group. The second one will be class. So a class where a person's position is dependent on his or her achievement and ability to use the inborn characteristics and wealth possessed. So this basis of stratification is dominant in our modern society. The third one will be the estate. So this stratification occurs in the medieval Europe, also emphasis on birth, wealth, and possessions, where each estate owned a state. The last one will be slavery, which is very common. So these occur when slave is subjected to a master, and the master's power over the slave will be unlimited. Okay, so now we'll go into the characteristics. The first one, it is consequential. So it gives all class a life chance and a lifestyle where each would be an intervening variable into changing and moving their position in the strata system. So it is like a cause and effect. The second one will be diverse form. So social stratification is not uniform in all societies. For example, ancient Aryas were divided into forerrunners, and for ancient Greeks, they were divided into freemen and slaves and etc. So for the third characteristic, it is universal. So no society in this world is free from social stratification. The fourth one, it is ancient, which means it is differentiated between the poor and rich, powerful and humble. So social stratification happens and occurs since back then. So the last one is social stratification is social. So for example, biological qualities, strength, education, and personality. Okay, so we are going into the types of social mobility. So what is social mobility? It defines the movement of social status within the social structure where one can mobilize from one social position to another. All societies possess the same opportunity for social mobility. There are three directions. So the first one will be from lower to higher, then from higher to lower, and the third one will be between the two positions at the same level. So in that, it is primarily two types: vertical mobility and horizontal mobility. So let's talk about vertical mobility. It refers to the movement of people from a status to another status. Therefore, there are two types of vertical mobility, upward and downward. So what is upward mobility? It defines the movement of people from a lower stratum or layer towards a higher position. The next one will be downward mobility. It refers to the movement of people from a higher position towards a lower strata. Then we'll go into horizontal mobility. It defines the movement of people from one social group into another, whereby the status are same. For example, a teacher in district A is transferred to district B, securing the same position, whereby with a different location of the school. So on the left side, you'll see a higher and lower, which by the upward mobility and downward mobility. On the right side, you'll see the changes in status at same level, which defines the horizontal mobility. So continued, we'll go into intergenerational mobility. It refers to the change of status within one generation. So for example, if the daughter changes the social status either by upward or downward mobility in the hierarchy form of her mother, so it is known as intergenerational mobility has occurred. And the second one will be upward and downward mobility in the occupational structure of a family leads to change in its social status within one generation. So this is known as intragenerational mobility. So in essence, social stratification has the basic outcome of life chances and lifestyle. So this is a cause and effect. So a class system will intervene both life chances and lifestyle. We hold our destiny in our own hands and we can make a difference. Thank you very much. And now I'll pass it to Justin.
Thank you, Huang Zin. So I'm going to present on gender stratification. So my gender stratification has three parts, which is the explanation of what it is, and then the gender stratification in US and gender stratification in Malaysia. So what is gender stratification? It refers to the social ranking where the men often have the higher status than women. And when we talk about gender stratification, it's always argued that the best gender or the higher gender is the men, as they want to attempt to maintain power and privilege over women, and they want to be seen as the dominant group, while the women are the subordinate group. And this happens in most culture as the men holds the most of the world resources. And there are four parts of the gender socialization, which is family, education, peer groups, and mass media. And I'll explain more in the next slide. So first is the family. So this happens when the parents socialize or treat the sons and daughters differently. So for instance, the boys or the men are allowed more autonomy and independence compared to the daughters at the early age. And they are also given few restrictions on their daily life. And next, it will be the teachers. They will interrupt the girls or the female students more compared to the guys. And they will give more opportunity to expand on their ideas compared to the female. And the boys will be given more leeway or freedom to break rules as they are said to be boys will be boys. And next, it will be the mass media. Mass media in television and movies, the female have less significant roles and are often given roles such as wife and mothers. And this is also seen in the television commercials where they will have stereotypes based on gender, and they will normally, the female or the woman will be shown in ads promoting cooking, cleaning, or childcare related products. Next slide. So for gender stratification in US, there's been a long history, for example, is that before 1809, the woman could not even execute a will. Before 1840, women were not allowed to own or control their own property. Before 1920, women were not permitted to vote. Before 1963, employers could legally pay a woman less than the man for the same work that's been done. And before 1973, women did not have the right to a safe and legal abortion. Next slide. And then the last part for mine is the gender stratification in Malaysia. So I've taken this data from the Department of Statistics Malaysia, which they have released in 2020. So based on their statistics and research, that showed that the overall gender equality has improved to 71.4%. And this was prepared based on the data from the Department of Statistics Malaysia and various agencies. And based on their research, they have seen that the scores for the education, labor force participation, economic participation, and also various other skills that we have improved and gotten a much higher score. Next slide. So as you can see in the graph, the MG score is much better, and we are ranked slightly higher compared to the previous years. However, we are still lagging behind a few countries such as New Zealand, Philippines, Australia, and Singapore. Next slide. That's all from me. Thank you.
Good morning, Miss. I'm Ujaeun. Today, I would like to present about racial stratification. So what is racial stratification? Racial and ethnic stratification refers to systems of inequality in which some fixed group membership, such as race, religion, or national origin, is a major criterion for ranking social positions and their differential rewards. And race is defined on the basis of a presumed common genetic heritage, resulting in distinguishing physical characteristics. And ethnicity refers to the conditions of being culturally rather than physically distinctive. So for sociologists, a race is defined as a group of people who are perceived by a given society as biologically or culturally different from the others. So some sociologists claim that people are assigned to one race or another by public opinion, which is molded by that society's dominant group rather than on any scientific basis. And it was used as a tool of domination, discrimination, and spreading inequality in the form of racial stratification. And Joseph Arthur de Gobineau in the middle of 19th century gave a first major racial classification in terms of three distinct groups, which were white, black, and yellow. And he also attached notions of superiority and inferiority with these races. Okay, next. And this idea influenced colonial rulers, and they at times tried to justify their colonial surgeons based on such ideas. And ethnocentrism is another explanation, which is a suspicion of outsiders with a tendency to evaluate the culture of others with terms of their own culture. And it creates a notions of in-groups and out-groups and use of exclusionary methods like ghettos, intermarriage restrictions, and social distance maintenance gives a practical shape to the ethnocentrism. And another theory says that racism is a result of highly unequal and exploitative relation that whites established with the non-whites. And the slave trade was a consequence of this approach. And whites used racism as a tool to justify colonialism and decline of political rights like citizenship to non-whites in their colonies to further strengthen racial stratification. And another reason is attributed to migration of ethnic minority to Western countries. When developed countries witness periods of economic hardship, native population started blaming the outsiders for taking their employment opportunities and economic space. So, a racially stratified society exhibits unequal access to resources based on race. And in the United States, different races and ethnic groups fare much differently in nearly all areas of life, including education, employment, income, wealth, health, and life expectancy. So according to the statistics from the Pew Research Center between 2014 and 2015, nearly a third of people identified as white are college educated. That compares to about 23% of African Americans and 15% of Hispanics, and over half of Asian Americans hold college degrees. And the home ownership for white Americans is up to 72%, and for Hispanics and African Americans, only 45 and 43%. The median family income of African Americans is about 60% of white families, and Hispanic income is about 75% of white families. And the income of Asian Americans is about 20% higher than the white Americans. And twice as many Hispanics and African Americans live in poverty compared to white Americans, and the unemployment rate for Hispanic is about 7.6%, and for African Americans is about 10.3% higher than Hispanics. And the infant mortality rate for African Americans is twice the number for whites and Hispanics. And life expectancy for African Americans is nearly 4 years less than for white Americans. And while levels of education, income, health, and other measures vary over the time, the basic structure of racial stratification in the United States is fairly consistent. For example, median income rises over time, but levels for white Americans and Asian Americans are consistently higher than for Hispanic and African Americans. Then racial stratification also happens in Malaysia. Inherited as a legacy of British colonial policies, the Bumiputra have remained the poorest group with the lowest average income compared to the relatively richer minority contingent of ethnic Chinese and Indians since Malaysia gained independence in 1957. And this economic imbalance has led to political and social instability, and racial riots erupted. And as a response to the race riot in 1969, the government developed a comprehensive affirmative action plan known as the New Economic Policy in 1971. And introduction of New Economic Policy has successfully reduced poverty from nearly 50% in 1970 to less than 1% in 2014. And household income inequality also narrowed from 0.513 in 1970 to 0.446 in 1989 to 0.410 in 2014. And that's all for my presentation. And now I will pass it to my group member, Wang Kaishen. Thank you.
So I'm Wang Kaishen. I will present about the conclusion. Social stratification lies at the core of the society and of the discipline of sociology. Social inequality is a foundation aspect of virtually all social process. A person's position in the stratification system is the most consistent predictor of his or her behavior, attitudes, and life changes. And the social stratification links almost all aspects of social together. Understanding what is happening to social stratification helps us to understand a wide range of other changes in society. And next, here is our reference. And then thank you.